What if I told you that in 2025, your phone, your baby formula, even your favorite app, could be used as weapons? Weapons not with bullets, but with data, dollars, and decisions. Because right now, China isn't just watching America. It's moving. Silently, strategically, and shockingly. You may think the war is far away, but it's already in your pocket, in your Wi-Fi, maybe even in your fridge. This isn't about paranoia. It's about patterns, 5 moves, 5 methods, and all of them are happening right now. The question isn't if America is being targeted. The question is, how deep is the infiltration and how late is too late? Let's begin. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. This story isn't just about a spy balloon floating across American skies. It's not just about semiconductor bans or viral TikTok dances. It's about a global power shift, one that's already underway. For decades, the US sat at the top of the pyramid. The dollar ruled. American tech dominated. And globalization? It worked mostly in America's favor. But somewhere between iPhones assembled in Shenzhen and lithium mined in the Congo, a quiet shift began. A new challenger emerged, not in the form of tanks or treaties, but in cargo ships, circuit boards, and satellite constellations. China stopped playing catch-up and started building its own rules, its own systems, its own standards. The kind that don't just rival the West, they rewrite the game entirely. Now in 2025, we're not witnessing the beginning of a conflict. We're deep into a geoeconomic war, fought not with bombs, but with bandwidth, not with bullets, but with blockchains. And the battlefield, it's everywhere. It's in the EV battery your car depends on. It's in the ports that deliver your groceries. It's in the algorithm that decides which video you see next. It's in the pharmaceutical ingredients inside your medicine cabinet. China has mastered the art of asymmetric leverage, not through force, but through control. Control over supply chains, over infrastructure, over digital ecosystems. And here's the kicker. Most of the world didn't even realize the game had started. While America debated TikTok bans and chip exports, China was building trade alliances, rewriting international standards, and quietly embedding itself into the plumbing of global power. But what's truly at stake here isn't just economic dominance. It's digital sovereignty, it's financial autonomy, it's the rules of trust in a world where information moves faster than any missile ever could. What happens when the system that underpins your economy, your data, your currency, your communications, is no longer controlled by your own institutions? That's the real threat. This isn't just a China problem or a US strategy. It's a redefinition of power itself. Who has it, how it's wielded, and who gets to write the rules. Because power in 2025 isn't loud. It's quiet, technical, and embedded. It's in the firmware, the fiber optics, the fintech app. It's the kind of power you only notice when it's too late to change it. And that's what makes this moment so critical. This is no longer a question of who will win the race. It's a question of whether we're all running in the same direction or if one side has already built a different track and invited the rest of the world to run on it. Now, let's break down the 5 shocking methods that China has been using to flex its power over the US in 2025. And trust me, these strategies will surprise you because they aren't traditional military tactics or espionage tricks. They are calculated, strategic moves designed to shape a new world order in favor of China's ambitions. The power of digital currency, the digital yuan. Let's start with the most immediate threat, China's digital currency, the digital yuan. By rolling out its own state-backed digital currency, China isn't just making a move to modernize its financial system. It's preparing to bypass the US dollar, the backbone of the global financial system and the international trade. And here's the kicker. The digital yuan is not just a currency. It's a tool for China to control financial flows on a global scale, with unprecedented transparency and tracking. The impact on the US is profound. If countries and businesses start accepting the digital yuan, China could sideline the US dollar's dominance. This isn't science fiction. In 2025, countries like Russia, Iran, and even some European nations have already begun conducting trade deals in yuan. And the US? It risked being left out of key global transactions, losing its economic leverage. 2. The Great Semiconductor War. Next, we've got China's insatiable demand for semiconductors and its growing ability to produce them domestically. The US has long held a dominant position in semiconductor manufacturing, with companies like Intel and TSMC leading the way. But China has learned to build its own supply chain, and it's catching up fast. What does this mean? It means China can cut the US off from vital technologies. We're talking about everything from smartphones to military systems. If China gains control over key semiconductor materials or technologies, it can significantly disrupt the global tech industry, leaving the US scrambling to catch up. China's strategy here is simple yet genius: self-reliance in key technologies. And if the US attempts to restrict chip exports, China can retaliate by cutting off critical supplies of rare earth elements, materials essential for US tech. The Belt and Road Initiative, building global infrastructure. One of the most underestimated methods China is using to exert influence over the US is the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. Launched over a decade ago, BRI is China's colossal project to build infrastructure across Asia, Africa, and Europe. From railroads to ports, China is investing in critical infrastructure that stretches across the globe. But here's the twist. These aren't just construction projects. They're strategic investments that embed China into the fabric of foreign economies, making countries financially dependent on Chinese loans and technology. For the US, the stakes are high. Countries that become part of the BRI are essentially tied to China. And as they grow in economic stature, China's influence over them grows. The US is now finding itself playing catch-up, scrambling to offer alternatives. But China has already won the trust of dozens of countries by providing affordable infrastructure, something the US has failed to do at scale. 4. Digital infrastructure and 5G networks. Another shocking method is China's domination of global digital infrastructure. China's companies like Huawei are leading the world in 5G technology. 5G isn't just faster internet, it's a game changer. It powers everything from smart cities to autonomous vehicles. And with Huawei's advanced 5G network spreading across the globe, China is increasingly becoming the gatekeeper of the digital future. What's the danger for the US? In the long run, China controls the infrastructure that powers not just communications, but also the data flow and cybersecurity of nations. That means China could have the ability to access, manipulate, or even shut down critical infrastructure at a global scale. 5. Strategic alliances and influence operations. Finally, let's talk about China's ability to build strategic alliances. This isn't just about economic deals. It's about deepening relationships with countries around the world, particularly those in the global south. Through diplomacy, investment, and soft power, China is creating a vast network of countries that depend on its resources, technology, and goodwill. What does this mean for the US? China is infiltrating global organizations, from the United Nations to World Trade Organization meetings. It's quietly shaping the global narrative to its advantage. China is making moves to displace the US as the leader of the free world, and it's succeeding in many places where the US has lost influence. This is just a glimpse into the 5 shocking ways China is targeting the US in 2025. These methods are designed to make the US less relevant, less competitive, and less able to shape global trends. It's a powerful reminder that the world is shifting, and the US needs to start paying attention before it's too late. So what's next in this high-stakes game between China and the US? Well, the coming years will be a defining moment for both nations, and the rest of the world will be watching closely to see how the US responds to this evolving challenge. First, let's talk about the economic implications. China is positioning itself as the global economic powerhouse, and the US risks being left behind unless it adapts swiftly. China's growing influence in trade, technology, and finance presents both opportunities and threats. For instance, if the US continues to rely on traditional methods of diplomacy and trade, it could lose out to China's innovative approaches, from its digital currency to its Belt and Road Initiative. But the real question here is whether the US can evolve its policies to maintain economic dominance while competing with China's ever-expanding presence on the world stage. The US might have to take a multi-pronged approach, something more dynamic and forward-thinking than simply trying to contain China. What would that look like? One option would be to invest heavily in emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, AI, quantum computing, and next-gen semiconductors. The US has the innovative capacity, but it must commit to long-term investments in research and development, securing partnerships with global leaders in technology, and ensuring its own manufacturing capabilities are on par with China's advancements. If China continues to outpace the US in the semiconductor race, or if Chinese 5G networks dominate the global landscape, the US will lose its competitive edge in critical sectors, jeopardizing its own technological and economic future. Next, there's the military dimension. While both countries have become economically interdependent in some ways, their military rivalry is intensifying. China's growing military capabilities, especially in areas like cyber warfare, space dominance, and advanced missile systems, pose a real challenge to US supremacy. As we've seen with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, geopolitics can shift quickly, and having the military leverage to protect strategic interests becomes more important than ever. The US will have to decide whether it continues to rely on traditional military alliances and deterrence strategies, or whether it needs a more aggressive defense posture to keep pace with China's growing influence, especially in regions like the South China Sea or Taiwan. Then there's the soft power element. China has been extraordinarily effective at utilizing soft power, promoting its culture, business opportunities, and geopolitical influence through platforms like Confucius Institutes and strategic alliances with developing nations. For the US, the battle for global influence will increasingly be a contest of ideas. Who can offer the best economic model? Who can lead the global conversation on climate change, human rights, and the future of technology? In many ways, this war of ideas will define the global order moving forward. The US has traditionally positioned itself as a beacon of freedom and democracy. But as China expands its sphere of influence, that narrative is being challenged. Will the US double down on its democratic ideals, or will it need to reconsider its own model in light of the rise of Chinese soft power? And of course, there's the question of alliances. China's Belt and Road Initiative has already proven that it's capable of fostering long-lasting economic relationships with key players around the world. This initiative has helped China position itself as a major creditor, reshaping the global economic landscape. For the US, the next phase of competition with China will involve solidifying and expanding its alliances. The US can no longer afford to rely on old strategies. It must actively engage in new partnerships and strengthen existing ones. From the European Union to Southeast Asia, these alliances will determine whether the US can counterbalance China's growing influence. Now, here's the most important question. What happens if the US fails to act? If the US doesn't evolve its economic, military, and diplomatic strategies quickly, China will continue to close the gap and may even surpass it in key areas. This isn't a theoretical situation, it's an imminent threat. The global balance of power could shift in such a way that the US is no longer the leader of the free world, but merely a former superpower trying to maintain relevance. But if the US acts decisively, embracing new technologies, strengthening alliances, and confronting China's growing influence head-on, it can maintain its leadership role and continue to shape the world order in a way that benefits its people and allies. In short, the next decade is crucial. China is already in the process of changing the global economic and geopolitical landscape. The US faces a stark choice: adapt or risk being left behind. And the world will be watching closely to see which path it takes. As we look ahead to the next decade, it's clear that the relationship between China and the US is shaping the future of the entire world. We've explored 5 shocking methods that China is using to exert its influence over the US and the global order, from economic warfare to military expansion, and the use of soft power in reshaping diplomatic ties. The stakes are immense, and the outcome will define which nation, or even which system, leads the world in the years to come. But here's the key question. What role will the US play in this global transformation? The US is still the most powerful country in the world in many respects. It has economic might, military strength, and a leading role in shaping global institutions. However, China's rapid rise is forcing the US to rethink its strategies in every sector. The coming years will test the strength of American leadership in both technology and geopolitics. The future isn't set in stone. The US doesn't have to accept China's rise as an inevitability. Instead, the US can leverage its innovative capacities, its alliances, and its values to stay competitive and shape the world order in its favor. But this requires swift, decisive action and the willingness to engage in long-term planning. The challenge is huge, but so is the opportunity. As we move forward, we must acknowledge one crucial thing. This is no longer just a rivalry between two countries. It's a global power struggle. The world will look to the US for leadership, and it will expect bold solutions to the challenges we face. Whether the US chooses to fight back, adapt, or simply stay the course will determine the shape of the next era. So, what does this all mean for you? You, as a global citizen, have a stake in this too. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a student, a policymaker, or simply a concerned observer, the decisions made today will impact your future. The policies that the US adopts today will shape the world that we all live in tomorrow. This is why it's important to stay informed. Knowledge is power, and it's crucial that we all engage with these pressing issues. Understanding the global economic landscape, technological trends, and geopolitical shifts. Only by staying informed can we understand how these issues will impact us and what we can do to shape the future. So what can you do next? First, make sure you're subscribed to this channel to stay up to date on all things related to global economics, politics, and technology. Hit the like button if you found this video insightful, and leave your thoughts in the comments section. What do you think will happen next in this power struggle between China and the US? Do you believe the US can adapt and win the race? Or will China continue to dominate? Let's get a conversation started. Finally, share this video with others who need to understand the high-stakes competition unfolding between these two superpowers. The more people who are aware, the more we can actively participate in shaping our future. The decisions made today will echo through the coming decades, and we all have a part to play. In closing, we've entered a new chapter in global history. It's up to us to stay vigilant, informed, and most importantly, to take action when the time comes. The power is in our hands to shape the future we want. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.